I think we're live, right?
Yes, we are.
We are live. Ooh.
Action.
Oh man.
Oh, this is awesome. You know what? We're gonna play around with this. You know, look, draft is here. We kind of just coming up, just we're just coming up for air. We did a whole bunch of just draft drinking, talking about all of our guys and everything like that. But before we get into all of that, let's get right into the intro. I'm gonna roll the clip. Welcome to another edition of Running Through the Jungle. This is the Draft Hangover episode edition. I'm your boy Justin Lacey. I'm joining you with Tim Lyons and Chase Young today. Fellas, how you doing today?
What it
Doing
do? What
good.
it do?
Awesome. And thank you so much for all of you guys who are joining us live on YouTube. We're also going to be on Apple and Spotify as well too to hear the audio version of this episode once it drops. Our boy Chase, I'm about to say our boy Chase, but our boy Brandon B Dirt. Pete, for those that know him, he's not going to be joining us today because he's handling some business with work. He got to stand on that business. So we already know how that stuff can go. Work life is always stressful and is a struggle for everybody. But do not fear. The three of us, the three amigos, we here. Okay. Be sure to like and subscribe to this channel. Please give that thumbs up, that notification bell, so that way you will know when we go live. We're going live now. These are going to be
Yeah.
a normal routine for us now. We'll still be able to send out the audios when they're done and when we're recording, but the live reaction is where we're going to have the most fun. We get to see how people can. We're finally getting this chance to interact with all of our guys and stuff. So this is exciting times for us right now. All
Yeah.
right, fellas, we just had the draft. We just talked about all of our guys. We gave our draft grades on our previous episode when we did our raw reactions from each pick.
Mhm.
We talked about our AFC North and our AFC counterparts as far as like how they drafts went. But I think it's time that we kind of like have to digest ourselves. I feel like that we still got a lot more to talk about, get a lot off our plate. As far as like, how we feeling, Tim, I need to start with you first and foremost. Like, how you feeling overall about the Bengals draft now that it's a few days has passed, the draft weekend is over, not your
Mhm.
immediate reaction, but now that things have kind of calmed down a bit, what's your feelings now?
Yeah. Like a couple of the guys, like I was saying before, it they were kind of like, why did we draft these guys? Why did we do this? Why did we reach? Why did that kind of stuff? But then, it took a couple days, or Brandon and I talking, or us three talking about the players and everything. I was like, that's some good. Those are some good draft picks. With the tight ends, with the additions of the two tight ends, with the corner. I can't remember their guys' names right now. With the addition of the corner, addition of the
Josh Newton.
safety. Yeah, Josh Newton. Then with the safety, safety position's still kind of like, what the hell you all doing? But then, with Dax Hill going to be moving to the cornerback room some. So
Hmm.
it's kind of like, we kind of understand what they're doing. This is going to be an exciting defense that we're going to see, I believe. And then plus with the offense, we saw not Tanner Hudson, but what's our other Drew Sample is going to be playing some fullback for us. And typically the Bengals really don't run um, a fullback formation usually. Sample will come in and come in there as a fullback on some plays, but not very often. So maybe we'll see some mixtures of plays or running the damn ball with Sample as our fullback, and and then the two new tight ends and the addition of Gasecki. So this draft has actually grown on me, and then with also with Burton being added, Jermaine Burton being added, kind of gives us an excitement of the wide receiver core now. Also, um, it's my attitude has changed a little bit And I think we had a good draft. I think we had a pretty good draft. I know I said that I gave us a B plus. Now I'm kind of give us an A minus, an A now. After going to be able to go back and watch film more, I'm kind of give us like I said, an A minus, an A draft now. So that's my opinion.
Yeah, that's very interesting that you gave the grade because my next question to you was actually going to be, do you feel like that you should change your grade
Yeah,
from when we did our raw reaction, our immediate reaction of PFF's B minus or B plus grade that they get? You
B
B
said?
plus.
plus, B
Yep.
plus.
Yeah, we got to B plus. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's good to hear that you gave him an A minus, and I can't necessarily agree. I can't agree with you more on a lot of the things that you said, obviously. But Chase, I'm gonna go to you about your overall feelings. You know, the draft digest, the mode of the episode here. Like, how are you feeling right now? Now that things have kind of tempered down a bit.
I feel pretty good. I initially thought we were gonna go D line in the first round and offensive line in the second round. I thought with having a guy like Johnny Newton on the board, we were gonna take him at 18. But again, I mean, you don't know what these teams' draft boards are unless you're actually in the building and you're seeing what they are. Because Amarius Mims, he was obviously their number one player on the board because they selected him. And that, everything that we had on our tool list that we had to check off, we had to get in this organization, seemed to be checked off. We were always talking about we need to get someone in there to stop the run and everything. We got Chris Jenkins in the second round, going to be a big addition. He's a plug and play guy already, you would assume. And then Mims will sit behind Trent Brown and the other guys and try to be more versatile as the first round pick. And the fact that we kind of hammered home the trenches in the first three rounds and three of the first four picks was huge because, again, that's where you win games. And that's where the Bengals, even though the Bengals have won 30 plus games over the last 3 years, the games where we've lost, we've been destroyed in the trenches. And I'm just glad to see that they finally really established that and try to hammer it home in the draft with some of these young guys. And hopefully they can pan out. And then, like Tim mentioned, with the new added fun factor of Jermaine Burton. Again, it adds a little bit of a different twist to this receiving core as Tyler Boyd was the guy in the slot that was able to get those tough yards on 2nd and 7, on 3rd and 5, and be able to be Mr. Reliable for a very long time. And Jermaine Burton being a 3rd round pick and everything, there's going to be some question marks, but he's got to go out on the field and prove it. We got other guys in this receiving core as well. But if Burton is the step out there, he's another deep threat along with Jamar Chase. They start moving Chase around the slot and everything. It's fun to think about because we hammered all of our draft needs home. And now we can think about what is going to happen going forward, especially with the addition of both the tight ends, McLaughlin and Eric All. And there's a lot of movement that this more refined offense can have. And maybe it does take on more of an old school look with having guys move positions like Drew Sample. Last time we had an H-back was Ryan Hewitt back in like 2014, 15. So maybe they're going to try to establish the run a bit more. Hopefully, like Tim said, run the damn ball. So we're going to see. I'm very excited to see how these young guys are going to come into Cincinnati and try to help out this team going forward and try to mesh with these veterans and ultimately go on ahead and try to win Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, absolutely. And a couple of things that you both have said that I want to highlight here too before I give my overall digestive feelings about everything. Zach Taylor's comments, regarding about position changes with Dax Hill more specifically, but also Drew Sample, as you mentioned with fullback. I think that is very unique that he's coming out and saying these things post draft. Like the immediate post draft conversation is, I'm just going to just talk about it now. Let's get it out the way now.
Mm-hmm.
Dax Hill is going to go be in the cornerback room. Drew Sample is going to be lining up at the fullback position. And I just think that is because they want to still keep developing those guys in some of their strengths and areas of strengths. Dax Hill is a really good cover safety. You know, there was a lot of miscommunication, a lot of misassignments, but he even said that he's embracing the challenge, not even just embracing the challenge, but embracing the position change because he's really good at covering. So with
Mm-hmm.
that being said, he doesn't necessarily have to be the the center fielder safety that we've hoped for him to be. He can add some competition and some depth in the corner room. Now, this is not going to foresee the future of is the Bengals going to sign him to an extension if it pans out or don't pan out. We just buying time, keeping him on a roster until we can move on. No, it's none of that. It's still finding an area of strength for him because he is still an athletic guy who can do a number of good things really well. I will not be surprised if they just Tell him your single most important assignment as a corner is cover all tight ends. The Titans just murdered us throughout the season, man. Last
Yep.
year, it was just
Yep.
ugly to watch at times.
Mhm.
And but when Dax Hill played, that was one of those positions where I felt like that. I don't really worry too much about the tight end because he's right there. Sure, they might get a couple of catches on him here and there, but at the end of the day, you liked his potential to grow in that position. So I
Yeah.
thought that was very unique that those comments came out. And in the Ryan Hill position, I said Ryan Hewitt, but it reminds me of Ryan Hewitt. But
Yeah.
Drew Sample, that's what I thought too. He's a great inline blocker. He is not a receiving threat. I'm sorry. I know he caught a touchdown, and I know there are just some Drew samplers out there. We call Drew samplers the sample fans samplers. There's some samplers out there that just absolutely love and just cannot that just live and die by the Drew Sample sword or whatever.
Wow.
I'm not one of those people, really. I just felt like that he was. I still kind of live in the past a bit with Drew Sample. He was overdrafted back in 2019 in the second round when you got guys
Yeah.
like DK Metcalf on the board. But I've gone away with that. I moved on. We're in a whole new different regime with the team. Andy Dalton, all those guys are still on the team, but Drew Sample still made the team and has an extension now. And well, his best suited skill set is blocking. So why not just have him be a fullback and can catch passes out the backfield if we absolutely need him to? But
Yep.
I think that it's another highlighting point because I think that the running game may take a step back a little bit when in terms of volume production. We might see explosive plays, but I think we're gone away from the days of the Mixons where we're having a guy that can just get us 150 yards on any given day off of 25 to 30 carries. Well, we didn't even do that much with Mixon last year. But Mixon was the bell cow back, and I feels like that the Bengals are going away with that, and they got to figure out a way to kind of generate juice for the rushing attack when you don't have that big time back like Mixon was. As much as I like Chase Brown, and as much as I like the addition of Zach Moss, both guys hasn't really earned the right to be the number one back, respectively.
Yeah.
And which goes to my slight digestive concern that I have that I like all the moves that we did, but I just feel like that, man, we should have taken an opportunity to grab a running back. We should have gotten an opportunity to grab those least positional values that people are got on their draft board so low. That would have been the perfect time to get some of the best players in that position or aggressively move up and get those guys. Tim, you like Audric Estime. He was picked two spots up to Denver before we even
Yep.
picked. And I was
Yeah.
just like, ugh, now I don't even want no running back. I don't even care. I just punt on the whole position.
Really?
Yeah.
And and then with with the linebacker, you had a shot at Junior Colson. You also had a shot at Peyton Wilson. But at the end of the day, I'm not too hampered up with it. Trevin Wallace, another one. Like I'm not too mad about those just because I still like our linebacking core that we have with Jermaine Pratt and Logan Wilson. But at any given moment, those guys can fall off a cliff like we saw them do last year, and we're going to see them struggle. Not necessarily like fall off a cliff, but those guys can struggle at any given moment, just
Yeah.
like they did last season. And next thing you know, people are going to be calling for the heads of, well, why didn't they draft a linebacker? You know what I mean? They're going to be doing stuff like that. And again, I'm not trying to be the negative Nancy, but that's just on my mind right now after the draft. It's like I would like what we did, but I feel like the more could have been done. But it's
Yeah.
also interesting enough, though. We can get into this a little bit before we go to break. Mike Potts has spoke. He made his media rounds a bit after the draft, and I got a chance to listen to him a few times on a lot of big time Bengals podcasts. He also made a live live appearance with Paul Dana Jr., Jay Morrison on his show. That was yesterday. It was a nice event that they held downtown Cincinnati on the Banks, and then a lot of people were in attendance. So he said he talked about every single draft pick. He didn't break any news or anything like that. But it was also very refreshing to see that, okay, why they went the direction that they did. And also, it was also refreshing to hear that they actually did they actually did consider trading up or trading back, that they were fielding hundreds of calls. Like it
Wow.
just didn't end up working out that way. And that the smart decisions each round was, let's just stay right here. The value seemed like it's probably best for us right here, and you still can't necessarily always project what other teams like the Philadelphia Eagles or the Detroit Lions or what they're going to do, because it seems like that every year those teams, and there's always those marquee named teams that make moves in the draft every year and they get celebrated for it. But that's what I've been kind of like feeling so far. But
Mhm.
overall, I'm not going to necessarily budge from my grade, even though I do kind of agree with you, Tim, about the A- grade, kind of upticking them a little bit. I
Yeah.
gave them a solid B, but I understand the B plus grade that they got from PFF. But the more and more that I start talking about this draft class as a whole, the more I still get excited about it. Like Jermaine Burton, as you mentioned, Chase, I just feel like that this kid is just going to be like the new guy that we're going to pay attention to, that we're going to hope gets the ball like one or two, three times each play, like each drive that we get on offense.
Yep.
We're going to be screaming for him. Hey, where is he at? We should use him. Get him the ball. It's going to turn into that for the fans. You know
It
what I mean?
definitely
So
will. It definitely will. And
yeah,
if I got to add something real quick, Justin,
go ahead. Go ahead.
when talking about some of these, the draft picks of maybe we didn't get a running back or maybe we didn't get a linebacker, like again, I would have loved to try to beef up the running back room and help out there or the linebacker
Mhm.
and everything else. With every time a player starts to struggle, you're always going to hear fans say, "Well, we should have done this. We should have done that." It's human nature. Like,
Always.
there's always a caveat. There's always a way out where it's like, well, we had the chance to pick this guy in round 3, but we didn't. We settled for this guy. Like it just happens. It can get annoying, but I'm not gonna sit there and be like, it just happens though. Like people are going to start saying that stuff. It honestly, it's just what you sign up for when you're a fan. You go go through that stuff in the process. But again, it's the Bengals might have had an opportunity to go up and get a running back if they wanted to. They very well could have.
Mhm.
Got like Audric Estime. Blake Corum got selected by the Rams. I think what was it, 93? I think 93 at the
Yeah, something
Rams.
like
Yeah, I
that.
can't remember the number, but yeah, I
Yeah,
know he
yeah,
went to the
yeah,
LA Rams.
97. Yeah, so
Again, good spot for him. Really
definitely
good spot for
really good
him.
spot. Yeah,
Mhm.
great offense in Sean McVay. But yeah, I mean, there's always going to be people out there that are like, well, woulda, coulda, shoulda. But we have our guys now, and we're going to roll with them. And I think we all understand that, and hopefully,
Yeah.
everything plays out and these guys can develop.
And I think the way the draft was going at day 3, I know I got a first thing in the morning. I get a text from, I think it was Justin or it was Chase. Man, I hope you get your guy, day 3 up with Audric Estime. And I was like, well, there's a chance we could. But then when that round came around, I was like, well, looking at it, I was like, oh man, the Raiders are before us. Broncos had 2 picks that round. And I thought for sure the Broncos were going to take them the first pick that they had in that round. And they didn't. I was like, okay, are the Raiders going to take him? The Raiders passed on him. I was like, okay, well, maybe the Broncos are going to pass on him then. Then the damn Broncos stepped in and took Audric Estime from us. And I don't know if the Bengals were going to take him or not, to be
Yeah,
honest with you. I
Yeah.
don't know. You know, I was hoping they would because so we could have that thunder and lightning and that boom, like I said. And unfortunately, we don't know what the draft plans were for the Bengals in that round. We don't know if they were going to pick a tight end or running back or a kicker or punter. Nobody knows because we're not in the room with them.
Yep.
And unfortunately for me as a Notre Dame fan, I would have loved to see Estime in stripes, bro. I would have been
I know
excited.
you would have.
Just like on the first night of the draft for me when Brock Bowers went to the Raiders, and I was like, what the hell? They just drafted a tight end last year
Yep.
with Michael Mayer from Notre Dame. I'm like,
Yeah.
what the hell are they doing? They don't have a quarterback. What are they doing? They don't have a running back because Josh Jacobs is gone.
Yep.
But hey, I guess they're just going to roll the dice and see what happens.
That's Vegas for you, man. Rolling dice and keeping things out
Bro.
there. So there you go.
Bro, I think that some teams have really kind of gone with what the successful teams in the playoffs did last season, and they try to emulate their draft process this season. And when I say that, I look at a team like the Green Bay Packers. Last year's draft, they took 2 tight ends in back-to-back rounds. They took Luke Musgrave, and then a round later, they took Tucker Kraft in a
That's
loaded tight end Kraft. And they already had Josiah DeGuara on the roster and another guy. I'm mistaking the name, but I know Josiah DeGuara because he was a UC tight end that I wanted who went to Green Bay.
Yep.
Green Bay know how to utilize tight ends. And I felt like the Raiders, when they got Michael Mayer, that was another head scratcher. Like, why did you make that pick? But
right.
the talent was there. it compare him. I mean, not Michael Mayer, Brock Bowers. I'm sorry, but yeah,
Yeah.
you had Michael Mayer that you drafted in the second round. They got both. That's crazy. The Raiders basically in back-to-back years took both tight ends that the Bengals wanted, like the Bengals fans
Yeah.
wanted.
Right.
Last
Yeah.
year, everybody was all aboard the Michael Mayer train or the Dalton Kincaid train.
Mm-hmm.
The Raiders took and got him in the second round. Never got a chance to fall to us. I knew that was going to happen. Whatever. And then in this year, they swiped Brock Bauer. But I'm gonna be honest. I was kind of glad that happened. I'm not gonna
You
lie to you, I
know,
was glad.
now as the draft went on, because I am glad about it, because from what I've read, the Chiefs were going to try to trade up and take Mims in the
Mhm.
first round, but unfortunately, it didn't work out for them, and he's a
Yeah.
Cincinnati Bengal. So you know what? Too bad, Chiefs fans. Too bad.
Hey, nah, for real. I, if we here's the downside if we would have taken Byron Murphy if he fell to us at pick 18, which I would have loved. You guys already know me on that.
Yeah. Right.
And Marius Mims would have been a Pittsburgh Steeler.
Yeah.
Yep.
He
He
would.
would have
He
bookended
would.
the right side.
Yeah.
Broderick Jones on the left. They
Yeah.
both played the college together in Georgia. That
It
would
would
have
have
been
went.
like, oh,
It
that
definitely
would have
would
been
have
oh
went.
shit.
Yeah. He would
Yeah,
have.
it would have went one of two ways for us and
Hmm.
the Steelers, because if we didn't pick Mims, they took Falatanu.
Hmm.
If we took Falatanu in the first, and they would have took Mims, you know, right after us 2 picks later.
Mm.
It probably would have went either other way. I don't think the Steelers were, from all the damn podcasts of Steelers stuff. From what I
Yeah,
understand, is they weren't looking at stacking the defensive line until later on in the rounds, and they wanted to get their guys in the first and the second round. So I think it would have went
sure.
either, like I said, either we got Mims or we didn't get Mims. They would have got Mims, or we would have got whatever. And what the Raiders, what they're doing, I don't know what the hell they're doing. They don't have a quarterback. They're going to put it on Minshew Madness Mania, whatever the hell it's called, Magic, or I don't know. He's like the Fitz Magic of this decade of football. He's going to play
Hold
on
on.
every single NFL team.
Do they not got Jimmy Garoppolo no more?
They released
No,
him.
they cut him. They released him after he
Oh, dang.
didn't. Hey Chase, didn't he test positive for PEDs or something?
Who? Jimmy Garoppolo or?
Yeah, Jimmy
Uh,
Garoppolo.
I feel like he did. I think
I think
he
he
might have.
did. I don't know. Don't
Well, it's
quote me on
not.
that.
I think he.
Look.
I think he did. I think he
Yeah.
actually did. Yeah.
Look, with the amount of injuries he had gotten over the years and stuff, I mean, I feel like he need to do something.
Yeah, he is.
He's
That is funny. He actually is under a 2-game suspension for violating the the performance
got
enhancing
it.
substance policy. So
Yep.
he will be out for the first 2 games of the season, regardless of where he goes. And another thing about the Raiders, I looked up the Bengals depth chart. Sorry about that. Continue. I was so interested about the Bengals depth chart, but yeah, I mean the Raiders. I mean, you guys are talking about with Gardner Minshew being their quarterback. I mean, they're in for a wild ride, to say the least. Their backup quarterback. I mean, obviously Aiden O'Connell, and then Anthony Brown Jr., who used to play for the Baltimore Ravens. Their quarterback room it's dicey. It is.
Yeah.
They're cutting it close over there in Vegas, but we play them this year too. So that's another story for the time. But yeah.
Before we go to break, another thing I am going to bring up too, because I brought it up a little bit earlier, and I just feel like that is just prevalent for me to talk about, just kind of get it off my mind for a little bit. Um, I know that we want to see the Bengals be super aggressive in the draft at times. Try to finesse as best as you can. Like the Philadelphia Eagles, I feel like that they just can't stand still. They just don't know how to stay in one spot. They'll trade up, they'll trade back, and then next thing you
Yeah.
know, they're getting all these players that was on the consensus board, and I'm like, oh, how the hell they get Will Shipley? You know what I mean? Like it's
Mhm.
stuff like that. You got Cooper DeJean now, like it's Quinyon Mitchell, and I'm just bringing out names of their draft picks that they got, and it's like, how do they walk away with all of this talent, so
I
to
don't
speak?
know.
But then I heard something, and I gotta give. And I know he's a Chiefs, or he leads the league of Chiefs Kingdom when it comes to the media world. But
Oh,
I
yes.
got to give Nick Wright this credit because I feel like it's the exact same wording that I should have went with all along. But basically, he was just saying this is that no other NFL GM really manipulates the consensus board like the Philadelphia Eagles do. And what he means by that is that you got all of these national media top 50 or top 100 draft pick players that are on the big board. that everybody knows about. And then when the Eagles, when they get their draft board ready, it's almost like they're just copying and pasting the consensus board of what everybody usually thinks about these players. And then they'll position themselves to take somebody and pair them with their need, but take somebody. And that usually involves a lot of trading up and moving back and all that kind of stuff, accumulating more draft assets. And then all the while, we're asking ourselves, but damn, man, how they keep paying all these guys? Because we all saw the list of
Yeah.
all the guys that they gave long-term contracts to. And we're just thinking, how in the world they have a bottomless pit of money? Well, chances are in a few years, those same bottomless pit of money cash grabbers that they gave out those contracts to are not going to be on that roster because they may have probably traded them for more draft capital in the future. And I feel like that they have to have a smart, savvy approach with them. Howie Roseman is one hell of a GM when it comes to this, is that you have to trade some of your assets for this year going into next year because this year's big board was not as strong as what next year's could be. And I think that's probably how certain GMs kind of operated. And I feel like that we want the Bengals to be a little bit more like that when sometimes the reality is that people just don't know how to be patient. And
Yeah.
it wasn't that long ago when the Philadelphia Eagles just took J.J. Rager over Justin Jefferson and
Yep.
that almost backfired on them. But because they drafted Devontae Smith literally a year later by trading up and trading back and all that stuff,
Yep.
now we're looking at them like draft geniuses. No, you have draft misses just like everybody else too. The San
Mhm.
Francisco 49ers, we're not going to forget that they gave
Oh,
away 3 first
big.
round picks to trade up to take Trey Lance. If it wasn't for Brock Purdy, the last pick in the draft, Mr. Irrelevant becoming relevant, they would have had a failed draft experiment and they probably wouldn't have been successful these past 2 years. Let's just call it what it is. But somehow they got fortunate. And sometimes you need luck on your side with that.
You
But
do. You
I'll
do.
digress from that point now. But at the end of the day, there's good and bad to both sides. You don't always have to be the hero and look fancy by just because you traded up in the first round and you got a blue chip player, so you think, but also, you don't have to necessarily get cold feet and think like, let me just sit back here and wait it out, or wait it out, wait it out. No, you ain't got. Sometimes it's okay. You might have a great player that falls in your lap, and I think the Bengals did do their due diligence and got the guy, Amarius Mims, and they stood pat again in the second round. Didn't force a trade up by giving up future draft picks down the road to get
Mhm.
Johnny Newton, like we all thought we should that they should have done.
Yeah.
Instead, they got a guy who they think is a blue chip player, and I believe him, Chris Jenkins.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I think that they did very well with that.
Indeed.
Yeah. I think that the draft went the way that the draft room that the war room expected it to go, and the way that it began, and then with Penix going in the 8th or ninth pick, whatever the hell it was, it was, you saw a tide just change during that first round. It was
Yep.
like, wait a minute, we thought it was going to go this way. No, it went this
Yeah,
way. It was like, and,
yeah,
and it just fell. I think the draft just fell for the Bengals and other teams, not just for Cincinnati Bengals, but for other teams as well. The way that they wanted it to fall, because we all thought that Minnesota was definitely going to trade up to 4 or 5. We thought definitely it was going to happen. Well, the way
right,
it was going, Minnesota traded up one spot and got JJ McCarthy just like they wanted. JJ McCarthy went
right.
went, went off the board, and and the Vikings could have a good year. So it was just like the way it was going, and all these mock drafts got people thinking, oh, this is what's gonna happen. This is what's gonna happen. Like I said, mock drafts are just Christmas lists that you hope to
They
get.
are. They
Exactly.
are. They're always going to be that one surprise that
Hmm.
everybody is not going to see coming, and it doesn't happen. But people like to predict that they can see the surprise coming, and it doesn't happen.
Right.
But there's always got to be that I'm right about Mister I'm right about everything, or Mrs. I'm right about everything,
The
and
smartest guy in the room. Yep.
yeah, like at this point, I try to use this draft to basically just look. Let's just be calm. I just want to enjoy the process, enjoy the festivities, and see how it all pans out. And for the Bengals, please just do not mess this up. Just don't.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. We are approaching the half hour mark of the show. For all those that are tuning in live with us, Austin Art, I know you in the comment section right now. We definitely appreciate you, or day one listener, day one follower, man. Got to shout you out. So I'm gonna broadcast your how's everybody doing. We doing fantastic, bro. We happy. We're on the show. We live, and I'm sure hopefully that there's gonna be others that will join in on along the journey as the rest of the show continues. But before we do, we're going to take a quick little few commercial break so that way we can hear our sponsors. For those that's watching us on YouTube, you're just going to stare at our faces for a little bit, as what Beater like to say. I would have my camera, but I ain't trying to do that right now. So we will be right back. All right, all right. Thank you so much again for joining us. Once again, I am your host, Justin Lacey, with Tim Lyons and Chase Younts. And again, to our live viewers out there, thank you so much for joining in and tuning in with us for another episode of Running Through the Jungle. It's the Draft Hangover edition. But again, please feel free to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and ding that bell to get those notifications so you'll know when we go live, since we are doing a live stream now. And also, please feel free to interact with us in the comment section. I mean,
Yeah.
again, we're new to this. This is very entertaining for us, and we're going to keep growing as we keep going. So we do appreciate all the support and all the love that you'll provide us and whatnot. As far as haters go out there, just hate somewhere else. We don't bring that nonsense here because you're gonna get booted or whatever. I don't know how. I don't know how to really
We're down
address
for
haters right
colorful
now.
conversation, but don't be an idiot.
Yeah, exactly right. Before we get into our next topic of the day, I do got to address one elephant in the room. I want all three of you guys. It's not so much to do with the Bengals, but it's to do with the Atlanta Falcons, because that's the team that's getting all the media publications about them picking Michael Penix Jr. with the number 8th pick after signing Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, $108 million contract. All right, Chase, I'm going to start with you. What do you feel about their draft and that pick more specifically?
I wish I had the picture of the reaction we had on our live draft show. It was it was crazy. Overall, I mean, just piecing everything together. So you paid a 30 like late 30-year-old quarterback $180 million over 4 years. Hasn't even played the snap yet. And you go on ahead and you pick a guy like Penix, who, again, I don't have a problem with him going in the top 10 at all. That was the last place I thought he'd go. The very last place, because I understand with Kirk Cousins coming off the Achilles injury and everything else, I understand wanting to have an insurance policy, but why? I'm not gonna say waste, but why would you use the 8th overall pick? And again, it goes back to, why would you sign him if you were not so certain about him and give him $45 million a year and $100 million guaranteed over 4 years? That's all I have to say about that. They could have used that pick to help out their defense on the edge if needed or whatever. But again, if they felt that Michael Penix Jr. was the right quarterback for the next couple of years, fine. But he's going to be 28 years old when Kirk Cousins' contract's up. And the thing that's going to be the entire year is, if Kirk Cousins has a bad game, what are the cameras going to do? Cut to Michael Penix Jr. every single time. They're going to be in the spotlight. And you're probably going to see them play a couple of night games to start the season off, or night games, 4:00 games, all that stuff. So this is just the beginning of this media circus parade that's going to be happening in Atlanta, because they picked a quarterback, number 8, after signing a quarterback who's been pretty proven in the National Football League for nearly $200 million. I wasn't a fan of the pick, but again, I like both quarterbacks. Just, I don't know about in the same quarterback room.
Tim, I need your thoughts.
I didn't understand it. It was very confusing of what they did. I like Michael Penix Jr. I think he was a pretty good damn quarterback. He had a good career in Washington. Then there's Kirk Cousins, who's had a good career throughout his whole NFL career. His whole time in the NFL. He can win regular season games. He can put up yardage. He's a character. He's a dad. He's a husband. I was watching what was it, the quarterbacks, whatever, on Netflix, and he was on there. And I kind of have a special place for Kirk Cousins, because he's getting older in the league, and he signed that big deal with Atlanta, and I was happy for him. But I still don't understand what Atlanta was thinking But I never understood what Atlanta was thinking. When Arthur Smith was their head coach and they didn't do anything for the quarterback's position besides bring, was it Marcus Mariota, or yeah, I think Mariota in there after they drafted the kid from Cincinnati, and all this other stuff. And it's like they don't have an identity at quarterback during that time period. And then you draft probably one of the great, well, I'm not gonna say great, one of the best options in running back in the draft, last year with Bijan Robinson, and then you stop running the damn ball. I don't understand that at all. The Riddler giving me a riddle that I'm trying to solve when I'll never solve. Hopefully it pays off for him. I hope Michael Penix gets the mentorship from Kurt. I hope that works out for them. But it's just a complete mess. Just like Chase said, we're going to see throughout games when if Kurt throws an interception or throws two interceptions, the fans are probably going to be like, put Michael Penix Jr. in, put MPJ in, MPJ. And then, of course, the announcers, Tony Romo, whoever, Chris Collinsworth's going to be like, well, this is a good time to put Michael Penix Jr. in. We're going to be hearing that crap all year long if you watch the game. I just think it's like it was like a clown show in Atlanta. Their draft was followed that direction the whole entire draft, anyways. So I don't know.
If I can add really
Go
quick,
ahead.
mentioning Tim, that was like the identity crisis with Atlanta because they drafted Bijan Robinson in 23. They had Tyler Algier in 2022, who had over 1,000 yards rushing. Cool, you can the running back room. Yeah, what was going on? Yep.
And they had Patterson as well.
Patterson, exactly. They had a three-headed monster running back, and they didn't know what they were trying to accomplish with that. But then you look at the quarterback situation this year. Honestly, it's kind of a lose-lose in a way, unless obviously the only way you win is if you win a Super Bowl. But when you're looking at, the Kirk Cousins thing, Kirk Cousins gets hurt and Michael Penix comes in and Michael Penix plays great. Then you're like, oh, we just wasted a ton of money on Kirk Cousins. But then Kirk Cousins plays great and then he plays this entire contract out. And then, I'm saying if they don't win a Super Bowl, but Kirk Cousins plays great throughout this entire contract. It's over with. Kirk Cousins retires after the end of his 4-year contract. And Michael Penix is 28 years old and hasn't played a meaningful snap of football in the National Football League. And now you got a guy that's closer to 30 than he is to 25. And you're like, you're in a really weird spot in that situation because then you got to pick up his 5th-year option. You got to see okay, we got to give him a prove it. Like, what's going to happen? The only way that, they have to win a Super Bowl in the next 4 years for this thing to actually be somewhat of a success, because somebody in that quarterback room is not going to be happy over those 4 years. Just going to say.
And I don't mean to interrupt. I know we don't want to talk about this for too long, but for me, it kind of puts him in. If that does work out for Kirk, it kind of puts him in. And you guys might not agree with me, but it puts him in the Josh Dobbs situation. Is he good enough to be a starting quarterback, or is he just good enough to be a backup because he just played backup for Kirk Cousins for 4 years? Who knows?
It's gonna be interesting. Yeah.
There's two ways that I can go about this situation when it comes to the Falcons in this draft pick. I mean, I'm obviously going to lean towards the side that it was a wasted pick, in my and majority of the media's opinion, and of the just sports world in general. The opinion of it just feel like it was a wasted pick. You had a chance to nab Roma Dunze before he went to Chicago at pick 9. You could have paired another weapon with Kirk Cousins, similar to like he had with Justin Jefferson. You could have had that right there. It would have made their passing game a little bit better by having him and Drake London and Kyle Pitts. And you had the running game, the running backs, with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier as well, too. You had that opportunity right then and there. I think that too much is being made of what used to be the thing with, the classic Patrick Mahomes gets drafted by the Chiefs, traded up for him in the first round. They still had Alex Smith on the roster. Yeah, they go 12-4 that year, and they were somewhat criticized for it. But I also think that the smart play of it is that the Chiefs also had the conversation with Alex Smith, and Alex Smith didn't sign a fully guaranteed
They
deal like
had him on
Kirk
the
Cousins
team
just
for a
did.
while. They had him on the team for a while. That's the
And
difference. Like,
and they did. They had him on that team for 4 to 5 years. At the time, I can't
yeah,
even recall. I think it was 4 or 5 years, whatever, that
yeah,
Alex Smith was on that team, and they just saw him get bounced out of the playoffs yet again. So they knew that they were going to probably take a little media shots, but people ultimately understood why they did it. And then you fast forward a few years later when Green Bay took Jordan Love in the first round in 2020. I think they're trying to emulate too much of that to
yeah,
where you still got Aaron Rodgers on the roster. He's just going. He ended up winning you an MVP, going back to back MVP, and Jordan Love had to sit a little bit longer. And there were people that were still to this day, they're still crucifying the Green Bay Packers for not getting him a weapon at that time. Obviously, they're now coming around to Jordan Love playing good football and producing decent in the playoffs. We saw that. But Jordan Love was struggling quite a bit. People are so quick to forget that Jordan Love was playing like a rookie. I
yeah.
ain't gonna sit there and forget like he didn't just lose to Tommy DeVito now.
That
Like,
was 2-5. They were 2-5 to start the season off. Like
mm-hmm.
things were not looking up for Green Bay at that point. And then they finally hit November, late November, and they made a turn. And that's the thing that I'm not saying recency bias, but it somewhat is. You know,
It is
players start
recency
playing
bias.
well. It literally is. I'm just trying to go from the term, but again, you look it. You see something you like, you're gonna forget everything else, and your eyes are gonna be locked directly on it. And they see Jordan Love playing
Exactly.
really well, and they're gonna forget everything that just happened and be like, "Oh, this dude's the next
Mhm.
Aaron Rodgers or Brett Favre." And Jordan Love's a good quarterback. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, they will forget everything, drop everything at at the doorstep, and be like, "Oh, we're good, we're fine." And
True.
that's what happens.
True
And Michael
story.
Penix Jr., me personally, I like him as a college pro. I compare his college game tape. It just reminds me very similar to Vince Young. I have not heard anyone bring that comp yet, but that's what he reminds me of when I watched him play in college. Vince Young dominated in college, and you thought you can hand the keys to the Benz when he got drafted by the Titans, and it looked like that was going to be a promising thing to do after the first 2 years of Vince Young. Then Vince Young happened. He got hurt, but also he lost his job to Kerry Collins, and he was also not good after another seed. I think '08 he played and got to the number one seed. But then in 2009, he was just awful. Vince Young came back in, and he just wasn't the same guy. He just didn't produce good. And then he obviously got to the Eagles, did the whole infamous dream team combo talk or whatnot. He just wasn't a good player anymore. And we know that story ended up writing itself the way that it did. There was still some upside with Vince Young's game. And I feel that way with Michael Penix Jr. But the injury and the age does concern me a little bit by the time that he will get an opportunity to start. But I agree, ultimately, in the end, it just doesn't make sense. I feel like that could have been. I get why they wanted to go that direction to emulate what has worked in the past for others. You take the bullets now, and you see the produce, you see the product, the fruits of his labor from that decision later. Maybe, but I think that the Falcons are not the team right now that need to invest in a first round quarterback when they have talent that can be surrounded, that Kirk Cousins can literally work with
Worry
on
about your
that
first
team
quarterback. Worry about your first quarterback before you get your
that you
next.
gave a fully guaranteed contract with, like the Deshaun Watson. Kirk Cousins,
Thank you.
maybe I wouldn't be so much hard pressed about it if he didn't sign a fully guaranteed contract. Like it was 4 years, $100
Yeah.
million, but only like 75 is guaranteed. You know what I mean? Like if it
Yeah.
was something like that, something that was seeming like it was team friendly, but it wasn't. It just wasn't. But nonetheless, I know we spent
We
a lot
did.
of time on that topic, but that's the
Sorry,
number one
Bengals
thing
fans,
that,
but we're going to talk about Falcons football today.
hey, I'm sorry, y'all,
Dirty
but it's
bird.
going on. Look, we're gonna get into some
We
real
had to
Bengals
address
talk here in
it.
a
I mean,
second.
yeah, we had to address it, but
But we had to.
yeah.
It's the
Mhm.
number one talking circus part in the media when it comes to the drafts, when it comes to draft talk in general. And I was just curious, like, what are your thoughts? Like
Mhm.
and we gonna talk about what's on the brain today. But now, after 15 minutes of long conversation about that,
Mhm.
sorry to our listeners out there that wanted to hear nothing but only Bengals talk. But we talking ball right now. But however, this is now we get into the open forum section. What is going to be specifically on our Bengals brain? Okay. There's going to be some good, there's going to be some bad, or whatever the case it may be. But we're going to talk about this. What's on our Bengals brain? I'll start this off. The jersey numbers, that's a nice little hot topic that's starting to get sizzled up a little bit on Bengals Twitter. For those that don't understand the Jermaine Burton and the importance of why we drafted him, and the fun reason why we drafted him is that he wore number 3 in college. I don't see. Okay, yeah, people can see my fingers. 3 in college, and that is the golden perfect opportunity for him. And that is the golden opportunity for him to wear number 3 in the pros, since nobody on our roster has it yet. And then it can just recreate this 513. The area code of Cincinnati is 513. The trio, the wide receiver trio, can just be 513. It'll be perfect. Well, as of not that long ago today, he's going to be rocking number 81. Complete missed opportunity. I'm like, what?
Well,
You wore it in college, bro. Why am I getting upset about this?
well, I mean, the standard isn't high from what the last 81 did. So I mean,
No,
he's got to go and get
no.
7 catches the first game of the season. He's fine, but I don't. But I know the fun. That would have been really fun. It would have been really fun.
But it's like it's bothering me for some reason that he ain't chose number 3. And the crazy part is that he was in an interview with Dan Hort or others, and they brought up to him, you were number 3 in college. You know that the area code is 513. How would it be great? Would it be crazy if you were to pick the number 3 as a jersey number, and you already got T. Higgins, Jamar with 5 and 1 respectively, and you could recreate the 513 trio? He said, "Oh, that would be crazy." He said that. Those were his words. And
Fail.
you still go at 81?
Fail.
Wow, just wow. I don't even have
That's
anything
like-
to say about it. That's crazy.
Oh my goodness. I hope that's not an early sign of what's to come about he going to fumble, like you just fumbling the opportunities. You should have went with 3 and you went with 81. And next thing you know, it's going to reflect on it. I'm not trying to put that bad juju, that energy in there, but that's on my mind right now. But look, I'm still excited about Jermaine Burton, man.
Mhm.
Talent and everything, man. I'm excited about it. But maybe it's just like, look, I ain't trying to do what the fans want to do. I want to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I can respect that regardless, though. But that's just on my brain, man. So I'm gonna go to you, Chase. What's on your Bengals brain?
Well, on my brain, they haven't officially released when the NFL schedule is going to drop, but for me, I am always about the vision, the visual, what's going to happen next. And the schedule's the next and probably the final thing that's kind of exciting that's left on this thing. The draft is obviously the huge thing that happened. And that was, the big thing. And everybody's just kind of packing up. We're hung over on the draft. So we're just kind of, chilling a bit. But the opponents are out. Where we play is out. Just the time, day, the week, all that stuff hasn't been decided yet and should be decided. Normally it's the second Thursday in May, so that would be next week, May 9th. Nothing's been official yet, but there's just a couple opponents on the Bengals schedule. Just things that I've had in my mind. So the AFC North, all right, versus the Bengals, at the Bengals, whatever you want to call it. A home night game against the divisional opponent, please, because in 2022 we were literally slated to play every single divisional opponent on the road at night. I know the Steelers game got flexed to 425. I was there for that one. That was cold, good win, but the schedule makers in that regard, they're like, oh, you guys are going to go on the road and play every single team in a hostile environment at night. Thanks for the smoke, but
even though you just went to the Super Bowl, and won the division.
Yep. You're gonna have to do that. So like, oh, thanks. But again, it would be fun to play the Ravens on a Sunday night in Cincinnati, because you already saw that the Bengals, what we did, the crowd did last Sunday night, and what the team did, all that stuff. It was the first time in 11 years they played a Sunday night football game at home in that regard in the regular season. So it would be nice to see the one of those teams walk into our house on SNF. The Eagles and the Bengals, Hurts and Burrow. The last time Burrow and Hurts played each other, I believe Burrow beat him by 50 in the college football playoff. I mean, obviously the LSU was like a NFL team in that time frame, but they were. But like still, I mean, but Hurts and Burrow, there was that time frame where Burrow took down Mahomes, and then Hurts was the next thing to try to take down Mahomes, and it looked like it was going to happen, but then Mahomes, they would overcome it. These two are very unique, and we haven't seen them battle in the NFL yet. So it's just a unique appetizer. And then you also have the receivers in those games. I mean, the receivers are going to be ridiculous in that ball game. You talk about two of the best duos in football. And then the Raiders and the Bengals. Marvin Lewis is back in town as an associate head coach for the Raiders.
That's right.
Yeah,
He
for Antonio
is
Pierce.
an assistant to the head coach
Yeah,
with the Vegas Raiders now.
Marv's first game back in Cincinnati, just another line factor, and it's the wild card rematch between the two from 2021.
And it explains their draft.
It
Marv is back with the Raiders.
He had
That
some,
explains it.
he had some
You cleared it for me there. Okay, go ahead.
All right, I'm glad we got the cat out the bag there. And then in a couple other matchups real quick. The Bengals and the Cowboys. Always it feels like when the Bengals go to Dallas, it's a 4:00 game on CBS, and I would not
nothing less.
Yeah, I would expect nothing less in that regard. The last time the Bengals beat Dallas in Dallas was 1988. Yeah, so they've had an entirely different stadium. Bengals Chiefs, no explanation needed. It's in Arrowhead. I don't have to go much more. And then the last one I was looking at, Bengals Chargers, Burrow Herbert 2. This time it's in Los Angeles. It's in it's over there in Hollywood. It would be, a very nice spectacle to maybe play a Monday Night Football game against them. So, again, there's some really fun matchups on this schedule. And, again, maybe it's because my mind is just all over the place and I'm out of school and I have way too much time to think about these scenarios. But, again, it's just kind of fun and colorful to think about. But
before I toss it over to you, Tim, I do got a couple of comments based off of the games that you listed off. Because here's my defining game, my defining moments that's really going to the early definition of how successful I think this Bengals team can be. But my expectation for them, I need to see them finally beat Dallas. Okay, that's number one.
Please.
I understand they're gonna be like, oh, it's the Cowboys though, whatever. No, the Cowboys are a national big brand team in all of sports, for that matter.
Yeah.
And you haven't beaten them since 2004. You have a second opportunity to go back down to Jerry World and beat them, which you should have done in week 2 of 2022, and you didn't. You fumbled that opportunity. Whatever. It is what it is. The Bengals still ended up having one of their best seasons in franchise history. Number 2, yes, I also need to see them beat the Eagles too. The Eagles are going to be a great team this year. They're rebounding from that one and done debacle that they had, and they just melted down completely. But I think that would probably be a Sunday night game because that is in Cincinnati. It's Hurts, it's Burrow, it's the Eagles, the flashy Eagles. They're a big brand. They're kind of like the Buffalo Bills version of the NFC. Everybody wants to pick them to be the face of the league, but they can't because they haven't really gotten past Mahomes yet. And I think that team is probably going to be a Sunday night slate for us.
I hope.
And then the division games, yes, I just need to see the Bengals improve. Just beat everybody at least once. Okay.
Yes.
Like you did in 2022, but you need to beat everybody just once. If I have a preferred team that I want to sweep, for me personally, it's going to be the Baltimore Ravens. I want to sweep that team. I want to let them know that, nope, we're still the big dogs of the AFC North. And the only reason why you won the AFC North last season, even though you played really well and you just pretty much boat raced a lot of teams, well, because Joe Burrow got hurt. And I hate using injuries as an excuse, but that was literally the number one reason to why we couldn't compete down the stretch and win it out and be in the postseason was because of Burrow's injury. But it is what it is. I digress. Those are my 2 early talking points. But Tim, you got to be our common force, man, because we're talking about all these excitement things, but I know we got some serious stuff to go over.
Like, I'm not as analytical as Chase is. Chase has got, he's got too much time on his hands.
Way too much.
Thank
you.
He's probably got spreadsheets of the possibilities of the schedules.
Behind him.
Justin's sitting there looking at every single jersey number on it. He's like, "Oh, who's going to be on this jersey? Oh, that's going to no." Me, I'm over here going, you know what? To be honest with you guys, like I told him backstage before we started the show, I don't care about the schedule right now. I don't care about the uniform numbers. That's not important to me. But my most important thing that my Bengal on the brain is T. Higgins. Is T. Higgins going to sign that franchise tag, which we all assume he's going to. There's been reports that he wanted a similar contract to what Pittman Jr. got for the Colts. The Bengals haven't even reached $20 million a year with the negotiations that they have. But of course, the media wants to make the Cincinnati Bengals look like idiots and go, "Oh, well, the office hasn't even been talking to T. Higgins." Bull crap. That's not the word I wanted to use, but bull crap. There has been talk. You know, it is what it is. It's a business. I know T. Higgins wants to be paid, but my personal belief on T. Higgins, and I love T. Higgins. He's 6'4". He's a big man. I love T. Higgins when he's healthy and he plays. He plays great. You know, he's somebody you can go to, but he hasn't been healthy these last 2 years. That's like me going to, you know, stop working for 5 years and then going into a job and saying, "Hey, hire me. I want, 6 figures of, I about cuss there. Woo. I want 6 figures a year, you know." But then, like, well, what experience do you have? You haven't done this in 5 years. Things have changed. Da 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 da. Well, it's kind of the same thing happens with T. Higgins. He's been injured. He's been injured the last 2 years. Like Brandon said in our last show, if T. Higgins played 16 games last year, 17 games last year, I believe it would be a different conversation with T. Higgins and the Cincinnati Bengals. I honestly do. But if you don't sign that franchise tag, that's like what, $23 million for 1 year?
22 and a half, something like that. Yeah.
You're getting more than what Pittman got paid in 1 year in his 3-year extension. So take the deal. And then let's get to our other elephant in the room, Trey Hendrickson. Trey Hendrickson, you just sat down with the Cincinnati Bengals in 2023, 8 or 9 months ago. You did a contract extension, to add another year to your contract. Now you're saying, "Oh no, I want security. I want longevity." Why did you sign that contract extension then? The way I look at it is this is I believe T. Higgins is going to play his year. He's going to either get an extension from us or Cincinnati Bengals will go, "Thank you for your service. You can go free agency." Or maybe they tag him for 2 years in a row. Who knows? That's a lot of money though. The second tag is like, I think it's like 26 mil or something, like 27 mil, whatever it is. But I believe T's going to sign his franchise tag. Bengals are going to have a successful season as long as our players stay healthy. And Trey Hendrickson, dog, I love you to death. I think you're a great defensive end. I loved you when you were with the Saints as well. But you got to either come to an agreement with the Cincinnati Bengals or play out your 2-year deal, and then you can walk in 2 years. But if you're in these stripes, show the leadership, give 110%, and maybe the Cincinnati Bengals will find themselves in New Orleans next year, or next year it'll be the Super Bowl, next year. But those are my Bengals on the brain right now, and I don't know how you guys feel about what I said, but that's how I'm feeling.
I'll touch base on both of those because those are serious conversations. That yes, the draft was fun. Talking about these were great to divert us from away from the attention and the fact that a couple of things that kind of spotlighted the Bengals in some negative light here has recently happened. And the most recent thing, I'm going to start with him, Trey Hendrickson. That's the trade demand that kind of got to me in my feels a little bit more than T. Higgins, because I think with T.
Yeah.
Higgins, it's just a contract battle, jostle more so than anything. Whereas Trey Hendrickson, he's recognized that the market is skyrocketed. He has produced so much, made 3 Pro Bowls, and he's kind of like really not, he's not even top 10 as far as defensive players go amongst the highest paid, not even close. I think the timing was off. And that could be subdued to the agent, whatever. I don't really need to go into those parts of the conversation, but he deserves to have a much more bigger payout than what he has received. And I think that him signing the extension last year, I said, damn, that was a smart move by the Bengals to get it done last year because they're going to be able to lock him up at a team friendlier value than what he's going to dictate or the market is going to dictate this season. So that was
Mhm.
a smart move by the Bengals. I think they were just a little too late on recognizing that, hey, I've been really valuable. I've played hurt. I've played with a busted wrist before, and I still went out there and got a couple of sacks in this game. I finished out I finished out the season strong as best as I could. The D line does not produce when I'm not on the field. He can use all these things to leverage in his cases, and I think that they just had to just shoot for the fences as best as they could to be like, look, you're not going to be you're not going to get paid what you want as far as like market value this season or even probably next season, but let's talk about it when the 12-month period rolls around when we can begin negotiations again, because that's when the negotiation will be eligible for him. And then we can talk about making you one of the higher paid defensive ends in the game, because I
Mhm.
do think he deserves that money. And it does suck that it sucks for him that he's getting paid less than the people that he's balled out and basically played better games than when they were lined up on the same field together, like him and Daniil Hunter. They basically almost had the exact same stat line when it comes to sacks, but the person that made the most impact was Trey Hendrickson. Like, I'm not going to sit there and forget that, even though the run defense wasn't as up to par as what you would like to have had. But Trey Hendrickson was the most impactful defensive player that day on the same day that Daniil Hunter was on the field, and he finished with more sacks in the season. So
Yeah.
that trade demand really does get under my skin just a tad bit more, and it is serious. And I'm glad that the Bengals, from what reports of what I'm hearing, they're going to sit down with them this week and just hear him out. I love that Zach Taylor really just wasn't fearful of going into the Trey Henderson conversation post draft and be like, "We love Trey. We want him here. We expect him to be
Mhm.
here. I want to hear him out." I loved all of that, and that makes me feel better about his situation more so than the T Higgins situation, because now I want to get into the T Higgins a little bit here. And I understand that he had the situation where he's missed a number of games, but I also think similar to the Trey Hendrickson thing, it's not like that he missed a ton of games and chose to not go until like 4 or 5 weeks, whatever, and then come back in and making business decisions that way. I hope it doesn't start to begin like that this upcoming season, to where it's like, oh, the season's lost, whatever. I'm not even going to play. He could have did that last year. People forget about
Right.
that, but he played. He played even when we weren't winning the amount of games that we would have liked to win. He still played in that blowout loss in the second game against Pittsburgh at their house. Teagan still was one of the bright spots on that team and still played
Mhm.
his heart out as best as he could when the situation wasn't ideal for him. I remember him just going out with injury and then trying to fight and coming back in and playing, even though he had a shoulder and a busted rib. That stuff kind of hurts. People don't really understand
Mhm.
that they're human too, and they're not taking these things lightly. He's going out here going against a very vaunted Baltimore Ravens secondary in week 2, and he's out there with busted ribs already going into this game, wasn't full healthy, and catches 2 touchdown passes. And I understand that was late in the game, but it's one of those things where it's like his heart is always going to be in it when it comes to playing football. And I think that's the value that you can't put a price tag on always. And I think that's also a talking point and a selling point for him, that if he were to show that exact same mentality, that toughness somewhere that needs a wide receiver one, they will throw him the bag, and he deserves it at that point. So
Mhm.
hate that these situations have happened between these two, and it makes the Bengals front office look very bad. It's illuminated a lot of negativity on the Bengals front office when they don't really deserve it. Because the fact of the matter is that you got two players, not necessarily disgruntled, but they just deserve better paydays with their current teams. And it does, I'm not gonna lie, it does give me a little bit antsy, like, what's going to happen with Jamar if he don't get the deal that he want?
Mm.
What's going to happen with future players that produce high levels? Like, let's say a Chris Jenkins, he comes out and start balling, defensive rookie of the year, on the verge of being a defensive player of the year in year 2 and 3 and so on. And he wants a new contract. The growing way for defensive tackles is already astronomical.
Yeah.
What is that asking price going to be? It's all those things, but it is a serious conversation. We can talk fun and games, but in the back of my Bengals brain, it was that too. So Tim, you're not a bad guy for ruining the vibe, because you didn't ruin the vibes.
You
It's
did
serious
it.
conversations that truly needs to be had. Chase, I don't know if you
Yeah.
feel the same way, but
Yeah, exactly. I don't have much else to say because everything that was on all of our minds was just put out there. That
Mhm.
was, it's been the, elephant turned to two elephants in the room, and now we have to try to get them out of the room, but keep them on our property.
Yep.
yeah. Well, to our live viewers out there, thank you so much for joining us.
Yes,
You've
thank
bared
you.
with us through a lot of our talking points, and we had a good time on the mic with you guys on this show. Again, feel free to please like, subscribe to to this channel, to this content, to this show. Every little bit helps. We're growing, we're producing, we're doing whatever we can to be a voice of reason and for us Bengals fans out there. We've always wanted to get into the podcasting game, and we're here. And we're here to be another therapeutic session that you can just come in and listen to. So please, feel free to make your presence known and keep joining in on our live episodes. But thank you again for so much for joining with us. I'm your host, Justin Lacey, with your boy Tim Lyons and also Chase Young. So our boy Brandon Herriott, he will be back. Okay. He had, like I say, he had some work things to take care of, had to stand on business, but he will be back next week, and we will be running through the jungle this time.